Pests beware, your fields have heroes. The Pests and Predators podcast is brought to you by Field Heroes and is powered by the Western Grains Research Foundation. Learn how beneficial insects fight pests and protect your crops. Visit fieldheroes.ca today.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Hello and welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host for the day, Lyndsey Smith. It is Tuesday, May 27th. It's been a bit strange. I'll be honest, I've missed all of you. It's been a while since I've been on the show. I did take some time off. Of course, last Monday was Victoria Day, the long weekend here in Canada. And then, of course, yesterday, Memorial Day down in the U.S. So we're back to mostly our regular schedule. But I'm here on Tuesday, which should have been Monday, but hey, I'm just glad you're here. We've got a great show lined up for you today. We've got a bit of agronomy, a bit of farm management, and even some policy stuff in the mix. We'll also hear from Jarrett Chambers with ATP Ag about foliar feeding in our product spotlight. Mike Schreiner of the Ontario Greens is going to join me to talk about a private member's bill that looks to create a food belt in Ontario. What's that all about? We'll also have a continuity conversation with Derryn Shrosbree and Sean Haney. I'll get it one of these days, folks. And then to round out the show, Bern Tobin has a conversation with Jake Munroe from here in Ontario, talking about not just cover crops, but winter camelina and where that might fit in the cover crop mix. So stick around for that. As always, if you've got feedback on today's show, give us a call, 1-855-776-6147, or give us a follow on social media. We are everywhere, folks. And with that, let's take a break, and I'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Time for a product spotlight with ATP Nutrition. Founder and CEO Jarrett Chambers.
The one thing that foliar should not be looked upon as is a way to fix a big problem that you're having. It needs to be built into your overall nutrient management plan. A lot of times the soil can't supply what the plant needs. This is where you have to put on a supplemental application to complement what you're already putting on in the soil. Sometimes we put on less nutrition we want for a wide variety of reasons, and foliar is a good way to top it up.
Same concept is like starter fertilizer.
What we're trying to do with a foliar, we call it a second opportunity of starter fertilizer. We want to give enough nutrition to the plant for 7 to 10 days. So let's put on the right amount, the right products, and the right ratios to feed that plant at that vegetative stage for 7 to 10 days. In-season nutrition on a regular basis to complement what they're doing in the soil. If you don't have a tissue test or soil test, then that's where we recommend a complete multi-nutrient product, like a relief product, to kind of get it right 80% of the time, because we know that's what the plant needs at that stage.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch Wheat Pete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. It is Tuesday, May 27th, and maximize productivity and profitability with an innovative all-in-one approach to farming. Combining accounting, business planning, agronomic field planning, and advanced technology, MMP Ag Intellect delivers personalized solutions that empower you to make confident, data-driven decisions. Visit mmp.ca today. All right. Well, it is, of course, a time when governments are busy doing all sorts of cool things, like today, the throne speech in Ottawa. But of course, our provinces are busy too. And there's a private member's bill coming up that may be of particular interest to our audience. And so we are going to hear now from Mike Schreiner. He's the leader of the Ontario Green Party, and he's got a co-sponsored bill going forward that seeks to create a food belt in Ontario. Joining me now here on RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com, it's Mike Schreiner. He's the leader of the Provincial Green Party for Ontario and the MPP for the Guelph area. Mike, welcome here.
Hey, Lyndsey, it's a pleasure to join you and be on RealAg Radio.
Yes. Okay. So some exciting things going on. For those who don't know, Ontario had a provincial election just a little while ago. We squeaked ours in before the federal one. And so, of course, now comes the hard work of actually, governing this province and bringing bills forward. And you've got a private member's bill that you're bringing forward, obviously very pertinent to our audience. Tell us what it is and sort of how we got here.
Well, MPP Bobby Ann Brady, who's the MPP for Haldimand Norfolk, longtime Conservative, now independent MPP, and I have co-sponsored a bill to protect farmland across Ontario by putting together a committee or a task force that would be farmer-led to come up with the criteria around how we would protect farmland through the creation of a food belt in Ontario. And I think this is so critically important at a time when we're losing 319 acres of farmland each and every day in Ontario. That's 1 in 9 farm families a week, equivalent of the size of the city of Kingston on an annual basis. And, that threatens our food security, our food sovereignty at a time when, Donald Trump is threatening our economy and our sovereignty. But it also really negatively affects our economy. The food and farming sector contributes $50 billion to the province's economy, employs 875,000 people in the province. 1 in 10 people in Ontario work somewhere along the food and farming value chain. And if we're going to pave over that asset base, it threatens our food security, it threatens our economy, and it threatens all those jobs.
Ontario it's a very populous province, obviously. So as you pointed out, we have a lot of people who already live here, a lot of new people arriving a lot. Everybody wants their little piece of paradise in suburbia, and that usually comes at the cost of farmland, as you said. Now this bill, as you mentioned, co-sponsored, the term food belt gets me, because is this an Ontario thing? Do we just love belts? We have green belts, we have all these sorts of things. So what is a food belt? How do you envision this?
The idea for a food belt came from farmers themselves who said to me, the green belt is this iconic brand in Ontario now. I mean, obviously, Premier Ford tried to open the green belt for development, and there was huge pushback from the public, and rightfully so. And the Premier backed off that proposal. And farmers said to me, we need something that has that same kind of emotional connection for people to protect agricultural lands. And so that's when people were saying to me, why don't you propose a food belt, Mike? You're the champion at Queen's Park for protecting farmland. And so I ran with it. And the reason we decided to do the bill in a way that sets up a committee or a task force, is that I feel, and Bobby Ann feels, that farmers should lead this discussion. So we imagine the committee to be comprised of farmers themselves, leaders in agricultural organizations along the value chain, and land use planning experts. I'd say particularly those with expertise in rural land use planning, to come together, put together the criteria of what the food belt would look like. I mean, some of the things we've suggested they look at is, how do we improve soil health? How do we maintain our ability to feed ourselves? How do we support the entire agricultural ecosystem? So things like greenhouses, input suppliers, post-harvest handling facilities, on-farm markets, how that connects to the preservation of farmland, and also looking at, challenges that farmers face in terms of just moving equipment. As you see suburban encroachment into rural areas, it's becoming increasingly challenging for farmers to move equipment between fields, for example. So, looking at all of those different variables and coming forward with a strong plan, because we simply cannot continue to lose 319 acres of farmland every day.
Mm-hmm. I happen to know some farmers personally who, will send me a snap or a photo of them, planting next to a Walmart, like quite literally next to. And so I can only imagine the traffic jam of trying to safely move equipment in and out, and safety, of course, for our farmers and for those on the road that share it as well. So, definitely a huge concern in a populated area. Now, when I think greenbelt, of course, I'm based at Ottawa. We have a greenbelt as well.
That's right.
Right. So it is, a thing, but it is a regional thing, right? So it has boundaries. It is whatever. To me, this sounds somewhat less about regionality, but how does that sort of fit into it as far as that question goes?
Well, so you're right. I mean, I imagine the food belt being something that we would create, food belts across the province. Where the regionality component comes in is this importance of protecting the agricultural ecosystem. So everything from, we need to make sure that we have enough continuous land in place that it's easier for farmers to, work their fields, that, we don't have conflict between livestock operations and suburban encroachment. And people say, hey, we don't like the smells here. That we have enough operations in place where input suppliers, food processors can be viable and profitable, implement dealerships, etc. So having those places and spaces throughout the province where you have a solid agricultural ecosystem that can be successful. And then I would also include environmental components of that as well. I mean, we need to have enough water to grow crops. We need to ensure that, we don't have air pollution damaging yields. In some cases for crops that require pollination, that we have pollinator habitat. So just looking at the entire business and environmental ecosystem that will lead to successful, profitable family farms. Because as I always tell people who, don't come from a farm background like myself, that, in order to protect farmland, you have to have profitable farmers too, because farmers need to and farm families need to make a living on that land. And so we see the preservation of farmland and the profitability of family farms critically connected, and all that support around those farms, whether it's on the input side or on the, processing, post-harvest handling, distribution side.
Now, this is you've co-sponsored this bill. It is a private member's bill. This is provincial. I'm more familiar maybe with the federal side, but what is the path forward for a bill like this, and what kind of support does it have?
Yeah, well, we're definitely seeing growing support. I mean, all three major farm organizations in Ontario have endorsed the bill. OFA, Christian Farmers, National Farmers Union, have a number of farm commodity organizations now coming forward with interest in supporting the bill. The Ontario Farmland Trust has come out in support of it. So my ballot date to debate the bill in the legislature is in another year. Not quite a year. And so we're going to use the next year to continue to build support. Not very many private members bills pass, but, I've been here 7 years and I've been a part of passing 3 private members bills. So it's certainly possible for members of the opposition who put forward a good idea and build public support for the bill to have it pass. I can tell you from the provincial election where I first put forward the idea of a food belt, very positive response from the agricultural community, as well as from a lot of urban folks who recognize that farmers feed cities. And, if you live in Toronto or Guelph or Kitchener-Waterloo or Windsor or Sudbury, wherever, you rely on farmers to, supply you with your meals each and every day. And then I think there's heightened concern given the Trump tariff threats and threats to our sovereignty, where more and more people are saying, whoa, what if the U.S. closed the border like they did during the COVID pandemic and we couldn't get access to PPE? What if they did that with food? And so the importance of protecting our food security, our food sovereignty, our ability to feed ourselves, is a national security issue as well as an important economic issue. And like I said earlier, if you pave over the land that creates all that wealth, all those jobs, all that food that feeds us, then that puts us in a very precarious position that we want to avoid.
Mm-hmm. And it sure doesn't come back. Also, love the let's have a comeback at the Farmers Feed Cities yellow shirts, everybody. Because mine, 100%. Mine is threadbare. And I've seen a few of the other ones out there. Still see the stickers every once in a while. Now, you mentioned, and I want leave on this point because I think it's really fascinating. So we went through a provincial election just recently. As you said, been at the 7 years, have moved some of these through. In this last election, it's no secret that the farming public typically votes blue. That's rural areas, farming areas. That's, I mean, federally, provincially, it is sort of the assumption. It's an assumption. It's not always true. But in this election, personally speaking, I think I saw far more, not just people, talking about voting green, whatever, but actually actively, like people within the farming sector that are actively farming, really promoting the Green Party. And it's really, for me, the first time I saw it sort of at that level. What was the election like for you and for your team? What has the feedback been from the farming sector for you?
Very positive. I mean, I had so many people in the agricultural sector say to me, the Green Party was the only party that actually talked about agriculture, that talked about farming, that talked about the importance of food security, and not just protecting farmland, but enhancing business risk management programs, investing in local supply chains, having funding available to increase processing capacity in the province, a whole host of issues to have a profitable, viable food and farming sector. And we're the only party that really actively, regularly talks about the important contributions that farmers play to our economy and to, our environment and the vitality and health of rural communities in particular, but every community in the province. And so I think people rewarded us in the farm community by saying, it's the only party talking about it. I mean, it could be that I grew up on a farm myself. I grew up on a cash crop and cattle farm. Some of our high-profile candidates, I think especially someone like Bronwyn Wilton in Wellington Halton Hills is, a leader in the agricultural sector, runs a consulting business supporting food and farmers. And so I think people saw we're the only ones talking about it. We're the only ones who are putting forward strong policies on it. And we have credible candidates with agricultural backgrounds who can talk about these issues in ways that, we know what we're talking about. And, some of that could also have been all three of the other party leaders were from the GTA. Mm-hmm. And I was the only one in the last election that said, you know what? What about rural hospitals? What about investments in rural schools? What about the fact that so many rural communities don't have the finances necessary to keep roads and bridges open in rural communities? Why is so much focus being placed on, building a fantasy tunnel under the 401 in the GTA, or $2.2 billion being spent to subsidize a mega spa on Toronto's waterfront, when so many rural communities don't have the funds they need to be able to provide the services that rural residents expect and deserve. And so I think people rewarded us with that by saying, hey, give these Greens a look.
Absolutely. All right. Mike Schreiner, thank you so much for joining me here on the show. I really appreciate it. And we'll keep tabs on where this bill goes. And we'll check in maybe in 6 months, see where it's at.
Okay. Thanks, Lyndsey.
All right. We'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Mazik Seeds and Lalamon Plant Care.
Time for a product spotlight with Genesis Fertilizer. Joined right now by one of the board of directors, Garth White.
I think Canada should be the powerhouse in agriculture. We should be number one in the world. We need infrastructure. We have a very strong fertilizer industry, but demand for fertilizer is growing 2 to 4% per year. So there's going to be need for more supply. It's important for the prairies generally, and be self-sufficient and have a closed loop. It's farmer sustained, and also is that it's going to be sustainable. This plant will be the most modern, the most environmentally sustainable plant in the world. And I know when farmers start selling their product, the big guys like agri-food people are looking for sustainable product. You need to have some sort of stability in your own economy. And I think Genesis will play that role. It's having the best-in-class plant. We're also going to set up super centers in Alberta, in Manitoba, and in Saskatchewan. So there'll be a network.
If you are interested in learning more, go to genesisfertilizers.com. And welcome back to RealAg Radio. It's now time for a product spotlight with ATP Nutrition. And we're joined right now by the founder and CEO of the company. It is Jarrett Chambers. Jarrett, how are we doing?
Great. Fantastic. How are you doing, Sean?
I'm doing really good. And for if anybody's watching this on YouTube, they can vote on who is wearing the loudest shirt. I think I win. You don't get upstage very often.
I know I'm a little shell shocked. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little shell shocked here that I've been upstaged on shirts. Absolutely.
Good stuff. Okay.
I thought we were only doing this on radio, Sean. Should have known it was.
And I didn't warn you that I was going to wear a loud shirt today. Now, we're going to talk about foliar application during herbicide timing. Now, there's a lot of growers who obviously are making that herbicide pass. Is that a good time to apply a foliar?
Yeah, actually it is. And the reason why is there's sort of 4 natural stresses that occur in a plant.
Okay.
And I'm going to say the other 3. The first one is seed germination is a natural stress. The third one is as the plant goes from vegetative to reproductive. And the fourth one is when the plant matures. The second one is when there's a natural stress in the plant. This is irregardless of man, mother nature, all that, is during rapid vegetative stage, rapid vegetative growth in the plant. So what happens just before rapid vegetative growth? We want to eliminate the weeds so that we can actually have that plant acquire as much moisture and as much nutrients out of the soil. So that rapid vegetative stage, just prior to that, is when you put on a herbicide.
Yep.
So this is a great opportunity to almost do like a second opportunity of a starter fertilizer to actually get the right balance of nutrients to really help propel that plant to drive rooting, drive vegetation, and also to help be sure that plant's healthy enough so that it can metabolize the herbicide so you don't get any herbicide hangover.
But from a plant's perspective, I was going to ask you about the uptake of nutrients out of the soil at that time. There can be some stall?
There can be some stall. And again, it could be the fact that it's maybe where we've placed our fertilizer. Maybe we haven't placed it quite right. Maybe that fertilizer hasn't completely got into that fertilizer band, or if we broadcast it. So in a lot of cases with a starter fertilizer, it's already growing well. But if that band's a little bit further away, the root system hasn't acquired it yet, it is kind of living off the soil reserves, which could be a little bit of an issue because have we done a soil test? Do we know if we're out of balance? Have we done a tissue test? Do we know if our plants are out of balance? Because again, if we do a tissue test and we see that we're out of balance, and then we put in a herbicide, again, that herbicide will kill the weeds, but it may stall that plant. So
jump back to that herbicide how a foliar can really help you through this period.
That's a great piece. I mean, ultimately, what we want to do is a plant has to metabolize and break down that herbicide so it doesn't die. That requires energy. So that plant produces so much energy, it takes some of that energy, puts it into rooting, puts some of it into vegetative growth, and it puts some of it into, I'm going to call almost like a defense system where it has to break down that herbicide. So if you normally produce 100 units of energy under perfect nutrition, but now you have it under imperfect nutrition and you have 70 units of energy being produced, the same amount has to go towards that herbicide, breaking it down. And that's where you get that stall. And in some cases, if the weather is such and your nutrients are out of balance, you get that little bit of flash. And I'm not picking on a herbicide. I am just saying we have seen this a lot, whether it be in cereals or in canola or in soybeans or in corn. We can see that flash. And if you look at that flash, when we look at the tissue analysis, a lot of time it's correlated to nutritional status in the plant, which is driven by the soil fertility program and or the nutritional status in the plant or in the soil. And of course, Mother Nature, if it's too cold or too wet or something's off.
It's kind of like during a farm show or a conference, a little bit of a late night, a little foggy the next day, you're trying to metabolize. You need a Red Bull. It's kind of like the same concept.
A little Red Bull.
So quickly here, just to follow up to this, tank mixes. So considerations to make sure that, I had this herbicide, I had the foliar, I got this great foliar from ATP, farming in North Dakota or Saskatchewan, but I got to think about what's going in the tank with it, right?
Yes, absolutely. This is a massive project we've undertaken for the last decade. We work closely with all the major crop protection companies. They supply us their actives. We do compatibilities to be sure that they're compatible in the tank. We have a full interactive compatibility testing or tables on our website, and you can go. That's at atpag.com. Compatibilities. We also work with a lot of crop protection companies to look at the efficacy in the field to see if it's maybe impacted weed control as well. And so again, that one, we have a whole list of pieces like that because we need to work together. We really look under our Chemtrition platform, which is a combination of foliar nutrition with agrochemistry. If we work together, this is how we drive the productivity for the grower. And the crop protection companies have been incredibly supportive of us in doing this.
Good stuff.
Even in the fact, in case of UPL, we've even taken it further with a full relationship with them because we believe in this is the right way to go.
Great stuff. So whether I'm farming in Canada or the United States and I'm interested in ATP Nutrition's foliar lineup, how do I find you, Jarrett?
So we're going to go to atpag.com and you're going to look under products and you're going to see that there's going to be a wide range of foliars there, the macros such as Relief or the Energy or the Laser line. And if you want to look at individual trace elements, you would go there as well. Under micronutrients, look under the Impel or the Kinetic line.
Great stuff. Hey, really appreciate it. All the best to you.
Alrighty. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio right after this quick break. Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host for the day, Lyndsey Smith. It is Tuesday, May 27th. And a reminder to join the Saskatchewan Stock Growers Association at their AGM June 8th to 10th in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. Registration is now open. Visit skstockgrowers.com for more information and to register. All right, we go now to, this is the 5th installment of the Continuity Conversations with Derryn Shrosbree and Sean Haney. We're going to talk about, and we're going to hear all about managing income tax and your taxes. It's not necessarily the most fun aspect, but a super important one. So we'll hear from that in just a moment. And just a reminder, if you would like to hear more of the continuity conversations that you've heard on this radio show, head on over to our YouTube channel. You can do a little search there and you can find all past episodes there as well. All right, let's get to it.
It's time for another episode of Continuity Conversations with the CEO of 33.7. It is Derryn Shrosbree. Derryn, how are we doing?
Very good. Thanks, Sean. How are you?
Pretty good. Okay, so today we're going to talk about one of the things that farmers hate doing maybe the most. We're going to talk about taxes, okay? And step 5 in the continuity process is how much personal income tax do you want to pay in April? My answer to that, Derryn, is I don't want to pay any, but is that the right attitude to have?
Certainly. Absolutely. Yes, it is the right attitude to have. I think that paying taxes is important because we do need roads and other bits and bobs. I don't mind paying some tax, like corporate tax between 9 to 25%. That seems reasonable. We get value for that from a societal standpoint. I think paying 54% tax is kind of egregious. I don't perceive to see the value of that 54%. You know, I was up this morning. I have a vegetable farm. It's April right now. and the spinach and the kale went in. So that was at 5:30 this morning. And I didn't see anyone from the government show up for the shift. There was myself and 3 Mennonites, and we were cranking. And that was at 5:30 this morning. Sun was coming up. It was a beautiful day. But at the end of the shift, at the end of the day today, after this call, I'm going back outside. I'm pretty sure the government's going to put their hand out and be like, can I have half your money? To which I'm going to be less than responsive to that particular request. So I think there is definitely some portion of tax needs to be paid. I'm okay with that. The Bible says 10%. We're between 9 and 25. I'm okay with that. Right? 54, I'm out. So how do we fix that little quandary of 54%? So there is a way. And it is, let me just say this very carefully, it is 100% legal and has been done for a long, long time. It is not new. It's just news to you. All right? So let me put that caveat out there. So this is how you do it. How do you not pay personal income tax in April? It's fairly straightforward. Your farm, your corporation, your farm, your business creates corporate retained earnings. It makes money. Right? That money you then use, generally speaking, if your farm is in the corporation. If your farm is personally owned, acreage is personally owned, the tax is a little different. But let's just use an easy example. Let's say you own a farm and all your land and your quota, or whatever the case may be, is in a corporation. And you're running your farm, et cetera, but you need money for gas and groceries. Obviously, you can put some of the gas on the farm, et cetera, but stay with me in the macro. The macro is this. You need to take money out of your corporation to go on trips, school, I don't know, gas, groceries, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to take money out to live. Let's say that your living expense is $100,000. Easy math. It's $100,000, right? So you got $100,000, you pull it out of your corporation. What happens, Sean?
You got to pay tax.
You got to pay tax. Yeah, depending on what province, you can pay between 10 to 30, 40%, depending. So once again, I'm just going to do this on easy math. Everyone's going to come back at me and be like, oh, but your numbers are wrong. No, they're not wrong. Stay with me in the macro. So if you take 100,000, I know, because the accountants, their heads are going to explode, right? But just look at, follow the narrative. So if you take 100,000 out of your corporation, you've got to pay tax. Let's just use easy math and say it's $30,000 per 100, which is about right in most provinces. So if $100,000 goes to the government, you take $100,000, and that's April. Right now it's April. So 99% of us are doing exactly this. All right. So you're like, okay, well, I don't particularly like that, nor do I see any value. Right? We follow my flow so far?
Yep.
So how do we get the $100,000 out of the corporation and not pay personal income tax? There is a way. The corporation, your farm, would take $100,000 and write a check to an insurance company that's buying permanent whole life insurance. Yep. The $100,000 of premium goes to the insurance company. So there's $100,000 that's gone. The farm then owns a life insurance policy. Generally, it's 10 times the value of the premium. So you paid $100,000, you get $1 million policy back. That's kind of handy. And we'll figure out what we use that for in the next conversation segment. So we've done one transaction. Transaction number one is $100,000 went from the farm, boom, to insurance company.
Yeah.
Farm gets life insurance policy. Transaction number one. That in and of itself is very handy, but not that interesting. The part that is interesting is we can go to a bank, any bank, like Scotiabank. Let's just use that. Scotiabank, for example, and say, hey, Scotiabank, can I please borrow back $100,000? The bank says, sure. They take the policy as collateral. You pledge it as collateral. You get $100,000 back personally. You take the $100,000 personally. That's interesting because loans are not taxable. So transaction two is a loan comes back to you personally. You have to pay that loan back, Sean. But when do you pay it back?
Well, it's connected to life insurance, so it'd be upon death.
Yes, you pay the loan back when you die. Therefore, that $100,000 is not taxable because you take it as a loan. So I've just saved you $30,000 in tax.
That makes sense.
You rinse and repeat that every single year for as long as you do not want to pay tax for, which I presume is not 1 year. I presume it's for quite some time. And we can rinse and repeat that as you wish. So the two transactions is transaction one, $100,000 goes out, which you were going to spend on gas and groceries anyway. So why not buy an asset that can do amazing things? Farm owns it, pledges collateral, bank gives you back the 100. Essentially, it's a mortgage. You're basically just mortgaging your life insurance policy. That's how you don't pay tax in April. Personal income tax. Corporate tax, pay the freight. Like I'm all happy to pay corporate tax. That's a good thing. But personal income tax, you can, after hearing this conversation, it's kind of optional. So you choose.
Does it have to be, you mentioned whole life, so it's got to be whole life?
Yes, because the banks won't lend against universal life. And obviously term has no value whatsoever.
Right.
So the only solution is participating whole life. And before you start like throwing your toys and be like, oh, I hate life insurance. Well, like, I hate life insurance too. But you know what I do like? Tax-free money. So it's just a tool in the toolbox. And combining the tool in the toolbox with another tool, put those together, you're getting something quite special, which is a much lower tax rate.
No, we can't have these whole life policies being connected to the transition plan for, say, off-farm kids or children, right? Because the loan is going to be paid out by the life insurance, and so we don't have or can you use those same policies?
Oh my goodness, you can indeed. Because now you can use $1. Not only are you using $1 twice, you can use $1 3 times. Because think about this. You take out the whole life policy. And this is, by the way, continuity conversation number 4, 5, 6, 7. Like it's a little lower down, but we can address it now. So yes, think about this. So you take out the life insurance policy. It's paid for by the farm. You get the money back, right? So you're capital flat. You don't have a drain of, I need inputs. I need to buy a bin from Meridian, yada, yada, yada. No, you get the money back. So 100 went out, 100 came back in. So you're going to use it for the same farm stuff you were going to use it anyway. But you now have this life insurance policy. Whether you use it for gas and groceries or reinvest in the farm, that's up to you. Or you can do both. But think about this. You died today. Yes, the loan gets paid off. In this example, it's 100 grand gets paid off. But the farm now gets 900 grand. You're dead. The on-farm kids get the acreage. The off-farm kids get the 900 grand.
Mm-hmm.
That means they still have supper together because the off-farm kids get cash. The on-farm kids get acreage and quota, right? So this solution not only sorts out your tax burden for April, it is vital for estate equalization. Vital.
We're going to get into, treating the off-farm kids equally to on-farm in the next conversation, but
yes.
One thing I do want to ask you is using life insurance outside of the tax strategy, but as a succession tool in the transition plan. Does that create an environment where everybody's sitting around waiting for mom or dad to die before they get any money?
So some people do use death as their career path and their career plan. Yes, that's an individual's choice, and it's not particularly good. I think that having open and honest conversations as fast as possible and as young as possible with the young folks shows that we're stewards and there's a continuity of stewardship through farming. So you cannot use my death as your career path. So that would be the first step, to have that conversation with folks, right? But yes, Sean, to your point, 100%. Some people are like, I'm going to sit back. Just going to wait for you to die. I'm going to get everything. It definitely, when you see the numbers, they are quite big. And yes, people can go down that road, but we have to nip it in the bud because otherwise, bad things will happen. Yeah.
What are some other tax considerations as a part of this process do we need to be thinking about?
Tax considerations, well, that's a pretty broad question. So it has to be, you don't need an accountant to vet it. You don't need a lawyer to vet it. It's a pretty standard thing. Don't forget that from a credibility standpoint, you're not facing some random dude who's a vegetable farmer. Your counterparties are, one, let's use Sun Life as an example. That's a $50 billion company. And two, Scotia, which is a $50 billion company. Those are the people that have written the paper between them. So you can't look at me and go, oh, no, that's too good to be true. Well, if it was, two $50 billion companies wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it, right? But they do. So it's not a question of oh, no, this doesn't work. Oh, no, it works. It's just, you got to get your mindset around that. So from tax considerations, like I said, it's extremely old. It's been done for over 100 years. It's not new. It's low risk, if any risk. I don't see any risk. We've never, and I've only done this for 17 years, continuity planning, so I'm just starting, so bear with me. We've never been audited. None of our clients have ever been audited. It doesn't trigger audit. You're buying life insurance, which is extremely important for a farmer or for anyone, and you're using the company to pay for it. That's 100% legal. Like it's an asset class that has been around as long, if not longer, than mortgages. So there is no red flags here. It doesn't trigger the CRA into a mind-blowing panic. Yeah. It's very bog standard. There are lots of tax things that you can do which will instantaneously trigger audit, which we can discuss, but we don't do.
You avoid. So, and the benefit of whole life is, although more expensive from a premium standpoint in comparison to term, is the term has no value, like no equity value, whereas the whole life, it actually does have a value component to it.
Yeah, it's great. I love the fact that you use the word expensive, right? Because whole life doesn't have an expense. There is no expense, right? Because that's a mindset shift you have to think of. Because when you say insurance, you go to expense. It's more expensive. It's not. It's actually cheaper than term. Because if you're using it properly, don't forget, what is the expense if you take $100,000, buy whole life, and I give you $100,000 back? What's the expense?
Yeah, I get.
There's no expense, right? Whereas term is lighting money on the fire and trashing it, because no one ever uses term generally. You don't die before the term is up. So term is pure cost. Whole life insurance is pure asset class. So whole life is used as an asset class to create wealth, to equalize the estate, and to pay no tax. It does three duties. Whereas term, you buy a 20-year term, it runs out, you don't die, all that money is wasted. It's gone. It's useful if you don't have a lot of income that you can shelter, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, if you have no cash flow, term is better than nothing. But term is a temporary solution for a permanent problem, because you're gonna die and you need all the stuff at the end of life. Term never steps up to the plate. Whereas a permanent solution for a permanent problem, aka death, you want to match those together, right? Hopefully that helps you a little bit.
It does. And just before we wrap up here,
yeah.
Whole life versus universal life.
Yes. Whole life, simple, easy to understand, pretty straightforward. It's I don't want to get too complicated. It is I'm a Fendt guy. It's the Fendt of, it is definitely the Fendt of tractors, right? Yeah. Black combines, beautiful. So for me, it's either the John Deere or the Fendt. So that's what it is. So universal life is extremely complicated, mathematically very, very tricky, and can go offsides fast because it is what's called self-directed. Self-directed means that the money that you can put investment components into universal life, it is sophisticated and complex. It has a use case, but for 99% of the time, universal life is not applicable to farming and to estate planning in the way we do it. There is a use case, but that's a full segment. If you want to get into the difference between those two, we can dive into them. But if you want straight up John Deere or Fendt, go for whole life. If you want something wildly esoteric, universal life, which comes with a lot of risk, is an option.
Derryn, thanks a lot for joining us here today. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure, Sean. Always lovely to chat. Thank you so much. Ciao.
I'm Lyndsey Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lyndsey Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, channel 147, Sirius XM. A reminder that for farmers, trust is everything. Genesis Fertilizers is making real progress toward providing reliable, locally produced fertilizer. Join the ownership group and protect your bottom line. Learn more at genesisfertilizers.com/credibility. All right, we go now for our last segment of the day. We're going to hear from Jake Munroe and Bern Tobin, talking about not just cover crops, not just cover crop fit, but where winter camelina may fit in the mix.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin. Welcome to Real Agriculture. Today, I am at the Elora Research Station catching up with Jake Munroe, OMAFA's soil management specialist. Sir, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. Hey, I want to talk about cover crops today. You do a lot of work on cover crops, and we are standing in winter camelina, and we're going to talk a little about this particular crop. Before we start there, let's talk about cover crops. What's the most popular cover crop these days, and do we need to add some more cover crops to the list?
Yeah, Bern, so the big cover crops in Ontario would be, of course, red clover, frost-seeded into wheat, oats after wheat as well. But then cereal rye would be another big one that's just very versatile, can fit in lots of spots. So kind of those would be the big three in my mind. But there's many other options out there to explore.
Yeah. Winter camelina. Before we get into it as a cover crop, tell us a little bit about the crop.
Yeah, so winter camelina, it's a winter annual brassica. There is a spring camelina as well, but winter camelina, it's related to canola. It's an oil seed. It's got some kind of unique properties of the oil, and it is grown on kind of minor acreage in the Midwest U.S. as well as in Western Canada. It's very much kind of an emerging crop, not a large-scale crop, but one that's got some interesting properties.
Yeah, let's talk about it from a cover crop perspective here. I see nice growth here, nice ground cover. Probably a nice fit for soybeans.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really kind of the niche here, the window that I'm exploring. As I've done a fair bit of work with cereal rye in the past, we know that we can get cereal rye established in many different conditions, even quite late into the fall. But there's some downsides to cereal rye, especially ahead of corn. And so the reason why I wanted to explore winter camelina is that it is a crop that has some potential to be seeded really as late as kind of mid-October, and to see if we could get some soil cover, like you say, some protection on soybean stubble that's not going to winter wheat, that's going to go to corn the following year.
Talk about what you've seen now. Obviously, this was planted last fall. You've got some cereal rye here. It looks really nice compared to cereal rye. Talk about what we're seeing.
Yeah, so in this trial here, we've got two seeding dates. So we've got what we're standing in right now is winter camelina that was seeded on October 4th. After soybean harvest, I think it was about the day after soybeans were taken off. And then we had a mid-October seeding date for camelina as well. And the rye was seeded at that mid-October date as well. So what we're seeing here, like you say, a really nice stand, very even. This was drilled, and we're seeing that we've got, very kind of different growth habit. It's a very different plant from rye. It's a taproot as opposed to a fibrous root system. It sets a rosette in the fall and then started bolting about a week to 10 days ago. And you can see here we've got about 6 to 8 inches of growth.
One of the things about cover crops is taking them out. You talk about you get some rapid breakdown from this crop.
Yeah, so it differs a little bit from rye in that sense as well. They're both well controlled, but just by glyphosate. Winter camelina though has a narrower carbon to nitrogen ratio, especially if you're a little bit delayed in termination. Say if you're into mid-May, often in that case you'd get rye that's maybe up to your thigh. Camelina also can bolt and get quite tall, but it's going to have much more rapid breakdown, and there's less concern there about tying up nitrogen.
Yeah. What about looking forward now? Challenges and opportunities. What do you want to learn? What do you need to learn about this crop this year?
Yeah, so there is a lot to learn with winter camelina. Like any new crop, or in this case cover crop, there's many positive attributes for it, especially ahead of corn, but we have had challenges. It's been a bit of a mixed bag so far in the last 2 seasons in terms of getting uniform establishment. So couple of key considerations. One, it's a very small seed, so about 400,000 seeds per pound. So it poses maybe a few more challenges for getting establishment. Should be seeded, quarter inch to half inch, through the grass seed box. It could be broadcast and then lightly incorporated as well. So it's gonna potentially require maybe some tweaks there in terms of equipment. It is sensitive to certain herbicides, whereas rye can handle a lot of different herbicides, residual herbicides. This is particularly sensitive to group 2 herbicides and can even be sensitive to group 5 herbicides, the triazines, in corn from the prior crop year. So things to watch there and things that we're learning kind of as we go here.
Jake, I want to touch on a couple of things you talked about. Variability. I mean, obviously we want a consistent stand. What happens from a variability perspective?
Yeah, so that's been an interesting aspect to evaluating this winter camelina in Ontario. In the last 2 years, we're standing in a near perfect stand here, seeded early October last year at Elora on a nice loam soil. We have a number of on-farm sites, and really it's been quite variable in terms of what we've seen for a stand. In some cases, almost no stand come through, and in other cases, something really nice like this. And so a number of factors come into play. One, again, newer crop to Ontario, we're learning about how late can you seed it. That could be a factor in terms of getting enough growth to get good overwintering. Factor number 2, soil type tends to like loamier, lighter textured soils and doesn't love wet feet, so that's a consideration for this species. And then residual herbicides, again, kind of looking at your herbicide program and being aware of that, and carryover issues can certainly impact this crop. And finally, slug feeding for no-tillers can be a concern. They kind of like the brassicas. We've seen that with winter canola and no-till scenarios, and I suspect that could be a concern here. So got a lot to think to watch out for in terms of variability.
I want to talk quickly about the rooting system. Always a consideration when you're planting cover crops.
Yeah, so pros and cons of different species. Cereal rye, a great fibrous rooting system, helps to hold soil, helps to build soil structure. Camelina, quite different, or more what we're used to thinking of in terms of brassicas. It's got a nice taproot, less in terms of an extensive fibrous root system, but it's going to go straight down. And if you get some decent growth, you got the potential to kind of push through some compacted layers with it.
Final thing, you do have a little bit of data here. Tell us what you're seeing here.
Yeah, so early days in terms of results, but what we want to look at is the impact on the following corn crop. Of course, we don't want to be hurting our corn yields with our cover crops, and very early results from replicated trials on an on-farm site as well as a small plot site from last year. We found that winter camelina was not having any negative effect on corn yield relative to just no cover crop at all, so kind of neutral in that sense. And if it gets away from you, relative to rye, where, if you got camelina up to here and rye up to here, camelina is going to be what you want to plant into because it, again, breaks down more easily. And we saw a neutral yield impact even when we were planting into, late May, early June.
Well, great stuff, Jake. Hey, thanks for taking some time for Real Agriculture. We will track you down in the future, see how you're doing.
Hey, thanks for profiling the work, and stay tuned because we'll have more data to come in the next year or two.
Good stuff.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's been an absolute blast. We covered a lot of ground here, everybody. So thank you to all my guests. Thank you to, of course, to Sean and to Byrne, for their contributions to today's show. If you'd like, give us a follow across social media. We're on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, X, Facebook. Just search Real Agriculture. You will find us. There is also the Agronomist has its own Instagram and TikTok. Give it a follow as well. That's where we post clips from the show, but also what's coming up. And so to that end, because I'm hosting and I can, a reminder, Monday night, 8 p.m. So this coming Monday, the topic's going to be foliar feeding. So using foliar fertilizers, what works, what doesn't, and what we need to know. All right. With that, we'll end it there. Have a wonderful week. We'll talk to you on Friday.